In this video, I will show you how you can make your containers and pods immutable. I will also explain why they are important if you want to keep your environment secure and easy to operate. Let's start. One of the biggest advantages of using technologies like Docker and Kubernetes is that they make it easy to make your deployments immutable. Immutable means that once your deployment is created, no one can change it. The only way to update your deployment is to deploy a completely new version of your pods. To understand why this is important, let's compare it to mutable infrastructure. If you allow modifications to your deployments, a developer could be tempted to perform a change in place and possibly introduce a bug. Even if it does not introduce a bug, it might be creating a configuration drift with other deployments in the system. That's a big problem. Imagine this scenario in the context of a large modern deployment with several microservices. In this scenario, our environment is very unpredictable. It's difficult to understand and to operate. And this is exactly what a malicious attacker is looking for. He can easily inject malicious code knowing it will not be detected. How can you spot a malicious deployment when all deployments are different from each other? In my opinion, mutable infrastructure, it's like driving a Ferrari blindfolded. Technologies like Docker and Kubernetes are very powerful and they allow you to scale to a large number of nodes and applications. However, if you don't manage them properly, it's just a matter of time until you lose control, and that can have a catastrophic effect. Anyway, now that we understand why immutable pods are important, let's open the terminal and let's start creating one. Let's start by creating a classical Nginx deployment. We check that it's running, and next step we're going to do a get on the welcome page, and I will just grab the title. Now what we want to demonstrate is that such deployment is mutable, so I'm going to replace the string on the welcome page, and as you can see the title changed. Now we edit the deployment and we make it immutable. To do that, we add the security context in the container and we set the root file system as read-only. Now we quickly get the pod and unfortunately we see there is an error. So let's check the logs. The issue seems that Nginx cannot write in some folder var cache. Let's have a look at the documentation. We search the Docker app Nginx page and we browse the documentation and we find an explicit reference to running Nginx in read-only mode. We need to set writable var cache Nginx and var run folders. Let's do it. Let's edit the deployment again, and this time we're going to add two volumes. One it's for the cache and it's going to be an empty dir, and we add a second empty dir for the run folder. Obviously now we need to mount them in the container, and we do that with the volume mounts. We need to use the same name used for the volume and we choose the mount path. We have to remember to make them read-only false, otherwise we will not be able to write in those folders. Let's see if this time it runs successfully. So we get the pods and there it is, it's running. Now we try again to get the welcome page to see if it's all in order. And if it is, then we try to modify the welcome page like we did before. And this time we don't manage. Perfect. The file system is read-only. Now I want to show you another good practice, which is running our pods in unprivileged mode and with a user which is non-root. In this case I'm gonna just use user 101 and same I do for group. Let's see if the pods is running. Unfortunately it does not run, but if we look at the logs we figure out that it is because it cannot open port 80. Which means that we need to change the configuration of Nginx. Let's see how we can do it. Rather than guessing the configuration, I'm going to read it from an existing pod, the one that is running successfully. And I'm going to save it in a file. Now we open that file and all we need to do is change the port from 80 to 8080. Next step is to create a configuration map with this file, and all I need to do is to issue the create config map with the from file directive. Now we're going to edit the deployment, and our job is to add that configuration map as a volume. We're going to call that volume config, and this time it's not going to be an empty dir, but it's going to be a reference to the config map. And we need to use the same name we used to create the config map. Now we got in the volume mounts, we define the mount path, name has to be the name of the volume, and the mount path is where the configuration is supposed to reside. In this case it's the config directory. We get the pods now and we see that it's running. However, if we try to kill, we won't manage to get to the page, but that's because we changed the port. Let's fix it to 8080, and there it is. The last thing I want to show you is how you can use init containers to customize your immutable pods. Obviously, you wouldn't be able to write to the HTML directory, but let's assume that we want to change our index.html. What I'm going to do is just execute a command that it's going to create the customized file I want instead of the welcome page. Next step for me would be to make sure that the file I create in the init container will be readable in my main application. So for that I'm going to mount a volume. In this case I'm going to mount it in the same folder I'm going to output the custom file. Then I need to create another volume. I name it HTML and it's just an empty directory. And now we mount it in our Nginx container. I will just define the mount path to be the correct directory, which is user share nginx html. The name is HTML of the volume and read only has to be true. Now we check that our pod is running, and if it is, we'll try to get the welcome page. As usual, we execute a command against the pod, we get the welcome page, and we rock! As you can see, creating an immutable pod was extremely easy with the use of the security context. If you want to try out what I did in this tutorial but you don't have a Kubernetes environment yet, watch my video where I teach you how to install and learn Kubernetes in just 10 minutes. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more of this content. See you next time.